Okay, I'm back with another political talk video. Been a while since I've been doing these regularly, but I've got an interesting topic I want to talk about today. So, at the time of recording this, it is the end of July. So we are still about 3.5 months until the 2022 midterm elections. But I wanted to talk about the 2024 presidential election. Now, I know I'm not the biggest progressive YouTube channel out there, but I wanted to take a minute and give my, not necessarily predictions, but just first thoughts about potential candidates for 2024. Now, I want to start off with basically the biggest thing I want to get out of the way. As I honestly feel 2024 is not going to come down to Trump versus Biden. I honestly think Trump more than likely is going to run for president again. He hasn't announced yet, but I think he's going to announce probably before the end of 2022 that he's going to run again. But I honestly think Biden, either right before or right after the midterms, is going to say he's just going to be a one-termer, not run again, just because both men will be around 80, if not already 80, come 2024. So I think it's going to be someone new for the Democratic side. Trump, more than likely, like I said, will run, but either he's probably not going to win the nomination, so it'll probably be someone else who gets it. So then the question is, if it's not going to be Trump versus Biden, who is it going to be in 2024? Well, I decided just to make a quick list of 5 potential Republicans and 5 potential Democratic candidates for president in 2024. And I'm just going to give my just initial thoughts on these 10 people on each one. Now, I want to also state, like I said, I'm a Democrat, but I'm a Democrat from a red state. So there are a lot of names on both sides I've heard, and I just want to give my initial thoughts on both. I'm going to talk about the 5 Republicans first, then I'll talk about the 5 Democrats, and I'll probably spend about a minute or so on each one. So I'm just going to go through them in order. So our 5 potential Republicans for 2024. First is former Vice President Mike Pence. Now, first thing out of the way, January 6, 2020, a mob of Trump-supporting rioters stormed the Capitol. Some of them wanted to kill Democratic politicians, some wanted to kill Republican politicians, some wanted to kill Mike Pence. But as weird as it is going to sound, and keep in mind, the January 6th hearings are still going on, I think the public at large is probably going to move on from January 6th. If the Republicans take back the House, the January 6th committees are going to stop. So I honestly think if they stop doing the investigations, January 6th is not going to be as fresh in people's minds anymore. So Mike Pence could probably use that to his advantage to run, saying, on the one hand, I can continue Trump's policies, but I'm not going to continue Trump's controversial statements on Twitter or all these, rallies that are just for my own personal ego attention. So Mike Pence could use that to his advantage. Now, Mike Pence, like I said, was part of the Trump cabinet. He was the vice president. Before that, he was a governor of Indiana, a key red state. So Mike Pence has some advantages going in, but do I honestly think he could win the nomination, especially if it's a crowded field? Probably not. Now, I only am saying this because I don't know too much about how well Mike Pence does on a debate stage, other than his debates against Tim Kaine and Kamala Harris. Neither were too interesting, to be honest. Mike Pence, like I said, just a standard Republican, so if it's not an overly crowded debate stage, he might get it. But I think it just depends on if it's like a handful of Republicans or over a dozen Republicans. How well does Mike Pence stand out? Probably one if it's a crowded field. All right, next, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. One of my favorite YouTubers is Farron Cousins. He has the YouTube channel Ring of Fire. He talks about Ron DeSantis quite a bit. And I will say this. Ron DeSantis is another standard Republican politician, but he also kind of ran as a Trump suck-up sycophant, for lack of a better phrase. Like, he did an ad of helping his kid build a wall out of blocks. He read, a story talking to, his baby about how great Trump is. So he's definitely going to suck up to the Republican extremist base that Trump got in 2020 and 2016 to try and win 2024. Now, DeSantis is up for re-election in 2022. More than likely, he's going to get re-elected from what I've seen of Republican polls. So if DeSantis wins, he'll use that to help fast-track him to the presidency in 2024. Now, should Trump run in 2024, it doesn't matter how many Republicans it is, if it's Trump versus DeSantis on a debate stage, from what I've seen of DeSantis, he does not handle pressure well. Like, if he does news conferences or, he does the occasional rally, he doesn't really do well being called out by other politicians, whether they be Republican or Democrat, or people in the press. Trump, he's good at attacking people personally, and he can, like, flip attacks back onto the people. DeSantis, from what I've seen, isn't as good at that. So if it's Trump versus DeSantis, or even DeSantis on a crowded stage, he may not be handled the pressure of being on a debate stage. Now, if he's the front runner and, like, the only main person running, then yeah, he might do well. But I think when it comes to a debate, he might struggle a bit. But it will be interesting to see if it's DeSantis versus Trump in the debates, should Trump run. Because one other thing I want to bring up real quick, I believe it's the 12th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution states that the president and vice president can't be from the same state. So if Trump does run and actually does get the nomination, DeSantis can't be his vice president. And that's part of the reason why I want to leave Trump off. I don't want to have to worry about thinking about that. But if DeSantis wins, then obviously he's got to find a way to win all the Trump crowd and the moderate Republican crowd. And I don't know if DeSantis has it in him to really appease to both sides, because he has, in his time as governor, mainly tried to go for the far-right base. So I don't think DeSantis would be good at getting moderates to vote for him as well, especially considering how, I guess, I'm trying to think of the best way to put this, how restrictive his policies have been on certain groups of Floridians. But it will be interesting to see if it does come to a debate between Trump and DeSantis. All right, third Republican. As I said before, I'm from Central Texas, live just south of the DFW area. So currently, my governor, Greg Abbott, is also up for re-election in 2022. Now, at this moment, he still has, I think, in some polls, a slight lead over Beto O'Rourke, but some polls show O'Rourke is basically tied, if not a slight, like maybe like a 1 percentage or 2 percentage point above Abbott. So he's still within the margin of error. But let's say, even though I don't want it to happen, let's say Abbott barely wins his re-election this November. He could also use that momentum, like DeSantis, to run for president in 2024. Now, I think on a debate stage, Abbott can probably hold himself up against others better than someone like DeSantis could. And again, Central Texas here, Democrat, but I think Abbott would be more moderate establishment Republican than DeSantis, despite the fact him also supporting similar policies, particularly things like abortion and issues like with immigration, because again, it's Texas border state. So I think Abbott could probably handle himself better on a debate stage and be able to appease both moderate and extremist Republicans better than, say, Ron DeSantis could. But again, if Abbott were to lose his re-election bid to Beto O'Rourke come November, then I don't think he would run. Because why would someone who just lost their re-election try to run for president? I just feel like he wouldn't have the political backing, or the, financial backing to run if it's like this guy's a former governor versus a current governor, a current senator. I feel like someone like Abbott, if he weren't to win his re-election, would decide not to run. And again, I'm hoping Beto wins. Still too early to know for sure. But if Abbott were to win again, I'm 90% sure he's going to run in 2024. Continue on with Texas. Fourth Republican I think might run in 2024. Senator Ted Cruz. Now, there are Republican voters in my family that do not like Ted Cruz. But the reason why I think Ted Cruz would run is because if Trump does not run in 2024, I think Ted Cruz can take the opportunity, because he's a bit of a political opportunist, to run in 2024 for president, especially if, again, Abbott doesn't run, because he's not up for re-election in 2022. So Ted Cruz will make it so that he can run. And keep in mind, in 2016, Cruz came in second in the Republican primaries. And he was an establishment darling, kind of like media kind of viewed people like him and Marco Rubio as like the upcoming generation of Republican politicians. Now, again, that was 6 years ago now. Come 2024, maybe Cruz can like reinvent himself in a way to make it seem like, yeah, I may be in my mid-50s, but I'm still fresh blood for the Republican Party. And I can really, I guess, appeal to both the moderate and the extremists. But here's the thing. Ted Cruz is a political chameleon in that he really, despite he may, on the one hand, have conservative, I guess, values that he claims to stand by, Ted Cruz is also weak in that it doesn't take much for someone to attack him, for him to basically just, I guess, give in or fall in line. At the Republican National Convention in 2016, when at first he was like, vote your conscience up and down the ticket, but then when a bunch of his political donors attacked him for basically not backing Trump, he immediately did that photo where he's looking sad, phone banking for Trump, despite the fact Trump attacked his wife and his late father. So Cruz is a political opportunist, but that's not necessarily a good thing for someone like Cruz, because that means, sure, he might have a few policies that he'll stand for, but like he'll say or do whatever it takes to get people to like him. But I think if it's another crowded debate stage, there might be a lot of Republicans that will especially use that image of Ted Cruz filmmaking for Trump to attack Trump, as well as things like Cancun Cruz when he fled, attacking LGBTQ community policies, especially considering I believe it's his older daughter is bisexual. She's done like plenty of TikTok videos talking about her being bisexual. So Ted Cruz is not afraid to say or do whatever he wants to, or what he thinks to help him get political power. But I think enough people have woken up, even on Republican deep right base, to be like, nah, I don't think Ted Cruz it really represents us. So I think he probably will not. If he does run, I don't think he'll get the nomination. And finally, fifth Republican, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Mike Pompeo, I think, might be a bit of a dark horse candidate. Again, another moderate establishment Republican. He was close ally to Donald Trump in the cabinet, his second half of Trump's presidency. And one nice thing I can say about Mike Pompeo, if you've seen pictures of him, he's lost quite a bit of weight since he left office at the end of the beginning of 2021. So he's probably trying to reinvent himself physically, and so also trying to like remain under the radar for the time being, because he's done a few interviews on Fox News, but he's not really necessarily attacking Trump, and he's focusing more just attacking Biden and the Biden presidency. Some warranted, some not so much. But again, it's a Republican politician appearing on Fox News. So I think he would run, and I think he may not do great, but just being a standard Republican politician, maybe if he got financial backing from powerful donors, and maybe if he got Fox News on his side, Pompeo might at least do well. But again, I don't know how well he does on a debate stage, but I think someone like Pompeo, if you were to run, might do okay. I think it just depends on how crowded the field is. Someone like Pompeo could be a bit of a dark horse, and if he runs, could he get the nomination? I don't know. But again, he's just another standard Republican. So if he ran, it'd be interesting to see, especially who would be up against him on the Democratic side. And that segue leads us to the 5 Democrats who I think could run in 2024. Because as I said at the beginning, 90% sure, either right before the midterms or right after the midterms, Biden's going to announce, I'm a one-termer. I've spent almost all of my adult life in politics. I just don't have it in me anymore. It's time for a new generation, new face to come forward and replace me in 2024. That's what I think is going to happen. So then, who would run? Well, the first Democrat I think could run would be, obviously, Vice President Kamala Harris. Biden himself, being a former vice president, knows what it's like to be in the White House for a certain amount of time. Harris, following someone like Biden, he could probably say, okay, I'm not running. I'm putting all my support behind Harris. And if he does that early on, politically speaking, that'd be a smart strategy, because it would probably, hey, if the president's saying, let's get behind this person, then it probably would curtail a lot of progressives from running. Now, like I said, I'm a progressive. Biden's moderate, almost conservative Democrat, but he's not an idiot. He's been in politics for over 40 years. So he's smart enough to realize if the president says, let's back this person as my successor, it'd probably help get the whole party behind them, because that kind of worked with Obama and Clinton in a little bit in 2016. Now, Harris has her own set of issues. So would Harris easily win the presidential nomination? If it wasn't a crowded field, probably. But could she win? I don't know. Now, she didn't do great on the primary debate stage, but she did very well against her debate with Mike Pence. So it would be interesting to see, but again, I think it just depends on how crowded the field is. If there's maybe just 1 or 2 progressives, but then a handful or so of moderates alongside Harris, because I don't think Harris really is progressive at all, she would probably have a hard time standing out. And again, if the Democrats were smart and who were running for president, they could say you're trying to, in a one hand, be a successor to Biden, but you also might want to try and separate yourself from the things of his presidency that went wrong. Because let's face it, even if you're a Democrat, diehard Democrat, Biden's presidency has not been so great so far, and we're almost halfway done with it. So if the Republicans take back the House, there's really not much more President Biden can do after that in 2022 until 2024. But yeah, so if Harris were to run, if she got the nomination, it's likely, but could she win? I don't know. Because like I said, I don't think she's the strongest Democrat. Someone who I think is a little bit stronger that could also run is California Governor Gavin Newsom. Now, I don't know too much about Gavin Newsom. I know that within the past year he had that recall election that he won, and he remained in office. And it's California, powerful blue state, so if Gavin Newsom announced he was running, could he get the nomination? It's likely, because again, going back to Farron Cousins' Ring of Fire, he did a video recently where he's basically comparing DeSantis and Newsom, and basically this Newsom being the opposite of DeSantis. So that would be something interesting to see if it was DeSantis versus Newsom, having those two guys go up against each other. But just not taking the Republican into account, if it was Newsom, from what little I know about his policies, could he win? Maybe, but I don't know too much about him on terms of a debate stage. But I do think after the midterms, Newsom is definitely one to keep an eye out for, because I think there's a chance he's going to announce he's going to run. And it will be interesting to see if the party decides to back a guy like Newsom or not. Next up would be Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg. Now, Buttigieg won a couple of primaries in 2020, still fairly young, so it will be interesting to see. I think if Harris doesn't run, Buttigieg might, because similar to Ted Cruz, on the one hand, Buttigieg might get a lot of financial backing from donors of the Democrats, but my main thing with Buttigieg is he doesn't have much of a political record. He was the mayor of an Indiana town. He, like I said, won a couple primaries, and then he got put in the Biden administration as Secretary of Transportation. And yeah, he is a military veteran, so he could probably use that to his advantage as well. And of course, he would be the first openly gay president of the United States. But again, the question is, would the party back him in the primaries? I honestly don't think so. He did okay at the beginning of the Democratic primaries in 2020. I don't think he has it in him to run yet. If he went back to Indiana, maybe ran for like Senate or governor there, and then say in 2028 tried to run, probably could win the nomination then. But it would just depend on his own, I guess, how things go. As a whole, Buttigieg seems like a nice guy. Is he a strong enough Democrat to win the nomination? Probably not. But it will just depend on whether or not the party and donors try to back him early on and then try to get him in there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I don't think if he were to be the nominee, he would win. But I do think it's likely he will run in 2024. All right, next candidate to talk about, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. Now, I will say this. I already said I think both Biden and Trump are too old to run for president again. And on the one hand, yeah, I think, if I'm being consistent, yeah, I think that might also be true for Bernie Sanders. But do I think Bernie Sanders might try and run for a third time in 2024? Yes, but do I think he will win? In all honesty, no. I do like Bernie Sanders. He was pretty much almost always in my top handful of Democratic candidates in 2020. I did a video talking about that a long time ago. I really like Sanders. Support most of his policies. Progressive Democrat here. I think his ideas are what the Democratic Party should be fighting for policy-wise. But, like I said, fair is fair. He's already ran twice. Came close both times. But his age, I think, is going to be an issue. If we were to find someone like Bernie Sanders, maybe in their 40s or early 50s, no question. If they were strong in the debate stage, they would win. But no question, the mainstream media is going to try to do what they can to screw Bernie again. The Democratic Party establishment is going to do what they can to try and screw Bernie again. If he runs, unless it's like a completely empty field, which very unlikely if Biden doesn't run, Bernie, I really like him, but I don't think he'll win. I got to be honest. And again, we need a younger crowd, and if Bernie runs, even if he is the strongest progressive in the Congress right now, I just think he doesn't. He may have more energy than someone like Biden, but I don't think he's going to do well enough to win if he runs for a third time in 2024. As much as I like him, he probably will run. I don't think he's going to get the nomination. Even if all was fair, no one was trying to screw Bernie a third time, I don't think he'd win. Really wanted to, but I got to be honest. I'm pretty certain he's not going to. And then finally, number 5, Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. Again, another Democrat whose policies I agree with, and I think she is obviously younger than people like Biden, Trump, and Bernie, and she did okay at the beginning of the 2020 presidential debates and campaign, but obviously, very crowded field, and a handful of progressives kind of split the vote in half. Then, of course, some right before, I think it was Super Tuesday, handful of establishment modern Democrats pulled out, backed Biden. Media was also not really trying to support progressives like Sanders. The same thing kind of applied to Warren. So, if Warren were to run, could she get it? I'm not 100% positive she could, but I hope she runs. I think she's a really strong fighter. Again, one of the strongest progressives we got currently in the Congress. So she has her experience running for president before. She has experience being a politician from a blue state like Massachusetts. The question is, will she be able to do better this time on the debate stage and have the financial backing that she kind of didn't have the first time? I don't know. I hope she runs. Again, I want to see a number of really strong progressives run, but we just don't have that many that have like the name recognition in Congress right now. Sure, we got a few AOCs, Ilhan Omar's, and other squad members like them, but I don't think any of them have the chance or to really run right now. Maybe in 2028 or 2032, maybe. So if Sanders weren't to run, then the only other strong progressive we have currently, I think, that would run would be Warren. And sure, Warren may not be the strongest, at least because there are some people that are still kind of salty the way she kind of screwed over Bernie in 2020. But I think ultimately, in the end, we need to put that aside and focus on 2024. So after 2022, if she announces she's going to run, I would back her. Question is, could she get the nomination? Hopefully she could, but it's too early to know for certain. So I think I'll end it there. There you go, 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans that I think might run in 2024. And again, currently at the time of this video, it's end of July. Still too early to know for sure how things are going to go with 2022 midterms. Republicans likely to take the House. Democrats likely to maintain the Senate. And who knows, maybe something could happen with Biden and he has to resign or could die before 2024. But in all honesty, at least currently, that's who I think are the front runners, or at least most likely individuals could run on the Republican and Democratic primaries. But let me know what you think. Is there anyone I left out that you think might run? Is there anyone I said who you would vote for if they were president? Anyone who I mentioned you would not vote for if they were the nominee for the party you like? Or do you think it could come down to Biden and Trump again? Let me know what you think. Please like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. And hopefully I'll get back to you in the near future with some more. Alright, take care.